Welcome to Gen 1 Rev 22 Ministries on Tuesday the 17th of March 2020, and today what I'm going to be doing is looking at dinosaurs and man and all the evidences for dinosaur and man having lived alongside one another throughout the world, throughout human history and dinosaur history, looking at the cultures which drew depictions and spoke about dinosaurs, looking at famous historians who spoke about dinosaurs, looking at famous conquerors who spoke and wrote about dinosaurs, and also we shall be looking at what evolutionists themselves have said concerning giving explanations as to try to wash away, if you like, the culture's recorded depictions and histories of dinosaurs and their explanations of what they, like I say, try to dismiss them because it doesn't fit the evolutionary timeline. Okay, first of all I'm going to be reading from the Bible, Job chapter 38 verses 4 to 7, and this is God speaking to Job, and because Job was trying to understand things in his own wisdom, and God was saying to Job, God is God and he created all things, and he's asking Job, exactly what do you think you know? Actually, you don't know that much, because I know more than anything of what you know, because I was the creator and am the creator of everything in the universe itself, the stars, the planets, the earth, all the biological life forms, and all the laws of the universe, etc. So the reason I'm going to read this is because we sometimes we interpret the world with our own understanding, which is okay to a certain point, but I think we can all admit that there are some times when we apply an interpretation to the world because we acknowledge that we don't and we can't understand it all. So that's when we all start going off on tangents and creating our own extreme world views about things that we don't know. So I'll say it again, God here is speaking to Job and basically saying to Job, this is the standard, I am the standard for you to be able to understand and have wisdom concerning the knowledge of all things. So Job chapter 38 verses 4 to 7. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding, who determined its measurements? Surely you know, or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk, or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Amen. So God is saying you're leaning on your own understanding. Some people have a worldview and a framework that they wish to shovel fit all of the evidences that everybody has into, and if that framework, that worldview is false, then there's going to be a false understanding and a false projection and a false teaching concerning the false worldview and false framework that people are going to be putting forward and claiming as truth to others. And the evidence that they try to fit in that will be taken out of context to how it should be interpreted. And one of these is dinosaurs and man. Evolutionary worldview, evolutionary science claims that dinosaurs and man did not live together throughout human history. They now are starting to claim, well, dinosaurs turned into birds, so theoretically, well, I suppose practically, they'll claim now that, well, actually dinosaurs and man are living together, because if dinosaurs turned into birds, that means birds are dinosaurs. Yes, I know, strange as it seems, it's new knowledge to everybody, but that is another topic, another subject. So we're going to get back to, have dinosaurs and man lived together, and what is the evidence? So what I'm going to be doing is using my blogspot, gen1rev22blogspot.com. I'll leave a link below, and you can go onto my blogspot, put into the small search bar on the left hand side dinosaurs, and the links for the dinosaur pages will come up, and you can read through them if you so wish to check what I'm saying. So it's gen1rev22.blogspot.com. So that's what I'm going to be reading. That's what I'm reading through now. It's my own blog where I've drawn up these articles on dinosaurs and man living together. Now, many cultures from around the world display and have within them a well-grounded history of creatures, which when on inspection resemble to a great degree what we would today understand as being dinosaurs. The word dinosaur was first penned by Sir Richard Owen in the middle of the 19th century. Now, Richard Owen was an English biologist, comparative anatomist and paleontologist. Prior to the word dinosaur, ancient cultures and more modern cultures would use the word dragon. Now, just going to interject a little bit here. I've also got a there's a video on my blog, Gen1Rev22 Ministries, which is also concerning dinosaurs and man. That's part one. So some of the things I'm going to say now will be on there as well. So if you want to go and have a look at that also, part one, you're most welcome to. And so, like I say, a lot of that, or some of it, I will be speaking about here. Atheistic evolutionary astronomer Carl Sagan took very seriously the accounts of encounters with dinosaurs, dragons, that have been recorded through the ages. He said, this is Carl Sagan speaking, the pervasiveness of dragon myths in the folk legends of many cultures is probably no accident. And there's a source there which I've linked on my blog spot, and he said this in 1977. So Carl Sagan's basically saying all these cultures down the past who have spoken about dinosaurs and drawn depictions of them, there's got to be something in it, basically. You know, there's got to be. We have to give an explanation. That's what he's saying. So the seriousness with which he took this matter is demonstrated by his attempt at trying to address this problem. For evolutionary theory of man living alongside dinosaurs, when man and dinosaurs are supposed to be, according to evolutionary theory, separated by some 60 million years. Now, obviously, I don't agree with those years. To me, they're hypothetical years, and to a lot of other people, they're hypothetical years and are part of the evolutionary interpretation of the evidences that we all have, as I've already said. According to Carl Sagan, the depictions of dinosaurs found globally spanning many cultures down the ages are just products of outward expressions of inherited memories from our primeval past. So Carl Sagan is attempted to do away, or attempted to explain away these cultures and the depictions they drew and the stories they told, by claiming that they were just memories passed on to them through the evolutionary process from generation to generation. And if you're thinking like I'm thinking of that explanation, then it really does seem ridiculous, and there's just science can't demonstrate that whatsoever as being true. So according to Carl Sagan, the depictions of dinosaurs found globally spanning many cultures down the ages are just products of outward expressions of inherited memories from our primeval past. Peter Dickinson, Carl Sagan tried to account for the spread and consistency of dragon legends by saying that they are fossil memories of the time of the dinosaurs, come down to us through a general mammalian memory inherited from the early mammals, our ancestors, who had to compete with the great predatory lizards. And the source for that from Peter Dickinson can be found on Gen1Rev22 blogspot.com, and that's in Flight of the Dragons. Okay, what a great scientific conclusion from Mr. Carl Sagan, who said the following regarding scientific discovery and how science works while speaking at an annual convention of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, AAS, in San Francisco. Carl Sagan, the most fundamental axioms and conclusions may be challenged, and the prevailing hypothesis must survive confrontation with observation. Appeals to authority, he said, are impermissible, and experiments must be reproducible. So, Carl Sagan, can your claim and hypotheses that these memories were passed on from our evolutionary process, from generation to generation, from common ancestors, etc., can that be tested and observed? Certainly not. Now we have also, we've just heard Carl Sagan, who is a well-known famous evolutionist, speaking of trying to explain away dinosaur history with man. And now we have another evolutionist, Louise Jacobs, who states what it would mean if it can be demonstrated that man lived alongside dinosaurs. Louise Jacobs, former president of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, quotes, "Such an association, man and dinosaur, would dispel an earth with vast antiquity. The entire history of creation, including the day of rest, could be accommodated in the 7 biblical days of the Genesis myth. Evolution would be vanquished." So, Mr. Jacobs does not hold to the biblical worldview. This is obvious by his calling the Genesis account myth. But he clearly understands that if man and dinosaurs coexisted, then it is in the final nail in the coffin for the evolutionary paradigm. From the evidence that is available, which spans every tribe and nation globally, it is obvious that man and dinosaurs coexisted. The very book, the Bible, the Word of God, Louise Jacobs attempts to claim as myth, contains eyewitness accounts of what are clearly known by us today as dinosaurs. Now I'm going to do another video on man and dinosaurs coexistence. I've already touched on in part 1 what the Bible, some of the Bible says with reference to what we call today dinosaurs, which are actually large terrible lizards, which are what used to be described as dragons prior to the middle of the 19th century. And so therefore the word dinosaur wasn't penned until the middle of the 19th century. So therefore, previous to the middle of the 19th century, they would have used other words for them, like serpents and dragons, and it would have been in the actual description of the dragon or the serpent that they've named. how we would come to understand and apply an understanding to what they were talking about. So that'll be in another video on the channel, put on the channel, and that will be concerning dinosaurs, dragons in the Bible. Now, what I'm going to do now is look at some of these records and historical accounts, depictions, etc., that they attempt to dismiss. There are a lot more than what I'm going to present here. Now what I shall do is put on the screen the depictions so you can see the pictures and see basically what is being spoken about by the certain people groups that we are talking about, who claimed, not directly but indirectly by what they recorded, that they lived with alongside dinosaurs, dragons, serpents, etc. Now the first one is the Chinese calendar. If we look at the Chinese calendar, we see there are 12 animals. All of these animals, 11 of the animals we can see are animals which we can say today, well, they lived alongside man, because that's why they put them in the calendar and use them. The year of the rabbit, the year of the snake, etc., etc. So if all these animals were used in the Chinese calendar because they lived alongside man, then there is one animal there also, or creature there also, which would be very strange if they were placed in the calendar but didn't live alongside man, and that is the dragon. In the Chinese culture, the dragon plays a huge part, and you'll find that on the calendar they have the year of the dragon. Now the year of the dragon, the Chinese calendar, clearly has 12 animals, with each of the animals representing a lunar year. All the animals used to represent each lunar year have been chosen because they were observed and seen by human eyewitnesses. So why is it the evolutionary proponents are in denial concerning one of the animals, namely the dragon? It is obvious that these creatures are large, terrible lizards, and are clearly the creatures that have been dug up since the 19th century and placed in museums and called dinosaurs. Chinese paleontologist Dong Ziming, Chinese history. The interpretation of dinosaurs as dragons goes back more than 2,000 years in Chinese culture. Dong Ziming, Secrets of the Ica Stones and Nazca Lines, and that source can be looked at in my blog, as I've already stated. Large terrible lizards coexisted with humanity. The name change in the 19th century, as I said before, did not change that fact. Evolutionary paleontology dreamed up the idea that dinosaurs went extinct 60 to 70 million years ago. Evolutionary years are hypothetical. There has not been this amount of Earth orbits around the Sun. Okay, so that's the Chinese calendar. Now we move on to Native American Indians witnessed dinosaurs. A Brontosaurus, Apatosaurus type like creature depicted on rock, dated between 800 to 2000 years ago. The picture attached was drawn, you can see it on the screen. The picture attached was drawn by North American Anasazi Indians. These Indians lived in what we now know as present day Utah, USA, approximately 150 BC to 1200 AD. Leading evolutionists agree that it resembles a dinosaur, so they accept the depictions resemble dinosaurs. Just like Carl Sagan accepted you can't just wash it and get rid of it and wipe the slate clean and be in denial, so he had to come up with an explanation. And evolutionists accept, as I say, the depictions clearly resemble what we today will call dinosaurs. Quote, there is a petroglyph in Natural Bridges National Monument that bears a startling resemblance to a dinosaur, specifically a brontosaurus with a long tail and neck, small head and all. The source for that can be found again in my blog. That was an evolutionary book. Take a look at the pictures of brontosaurus. Yeah, you can go on Google, have a look at the pictures put in, and there's no denying that that is a drawing of a picture on a cave wall by Indians who existed or lived in that part of the USA in Utah 150 BC to 1200 AD. We come on to a Tanistropheus dinosaur. So the Romans also seen them. So this was on a Roman mosaic, and it's a Tanistropheus dinosaur. Picture will be on the screen for you to view. Tanistropheus dinosaur depicted on Roman mosaic. Here we have a Roman mosaic attached picture dated at 200 AD, 1800 years ago. Amazingly, it must be asked, why is there a depiction of what seems to be a Tanistropheus dinosaur, dragon, serpent on this Roman mosaic, which is nearly 2,000 years old? So just how did the artist conjure up such a creature resembling what we now know today as dinosaurs, if indeed dinosaurs were extinct 65 million years ago, considering the man is not supposed to have arrived on the planet until approximately 60 something million years after dinosaurs supposedly went extinct. That's the Tanistropheus on the Roman mosaic. We have an interesting is also we have observations which were recorded by traders and explorers, historians, etc. And one of them was Marco Polo. Marco Polo, 1254 AD to 1324 AD, recorded seeing huge serpents, dragon, dinosaur, large terrible lizards. Huge serpents are recorded by the trader and explorer Marco Polo. Could these be eyewitness accounts of what we today call dinosaurs? Marco Polo travelled through Asia, Persia, China and Indonesia over a period of some 20 years between 1271 and 1298. Men like Christopher Columbus were inspired due to him, resulting in them exploring the world. The Travels of Marco Polo is the written record of Marco Polo, his travels and adventures. We find within this written record a detailed account of what Marco Polo describes and reports as being huge serpents. From these accounts, it seems that Marco Polo was describing what we would call dinosaurs, large terrible lizards, serpents. Take a read for yourself, The Travels of Marco Polo, Part 2, Chapter 40. And we're going to quote it here. Same again, go to Google, check out yourself, go onto my blog, put in dinosaurs, top left hand side as you look at the screen, a little window, dinosaurs, and they'll all come up. So Marco Polo, quote, leaving the city of Yaki, or Yachi, correct pronunciation, I'm not sure, and travelling 10 days in a westerly direction, you reach the province of Karazhan, which is also the name of the chief city. Here are seen huge serpents, 10 paces in length, about 30 feet, and 10 spans, about 8 feet girth of the body. At the forepart, near the head, they have 2 short legs, having 3 claws like those of a tiger, with eyes larger than a 4-penny loaf. So it must be pretty impressive to be able to take down tigers and wolves, etc., especially a tiger. And it says any other creature they devour. There's no creature that can survive this attack from this creature. After which, quote again, after which they drag themselves towards some lake, spring of water or river in order to drink. By their motion in this way along the shore and their vast weight, they make a deep impression as if a heavy beam had been drawn along the sands. Those whose employment is to hunt them observe the track by which they are most frequently accustomed to go, and fix into the ground several pieces of wood armed with sharp iron spikes, which they cover with sand in such a manner as to not be perceptible. When therefore the animals make their way towards the places they usually haunt, they are wounded by these instruments and speedily killed. The crows, as soon as they perceive them to be dead, set up to scream, and this serves as a signal to the hunters, who advance the spot and proceed to separate the skin from the flesh, taking care immediately to secure the gall, which is most highly esteemed in medicine. In cases of the bite of a mad dog, a penny weight of it dissolved in wine is administered. So what we're looking at here now is we're talking about they are using it. So what we're looking at now is once they've killed this large terrible lizard, dragon, dinosaur, they then use parts of the carcass of the creature for medicine, much like would be used, we know throughout human history, even today, parts of animal carcasses, fish, etc. are used because it's claimed that they have medicinal properties and can be used to treat certain ailments, etc. So in cases of the bite of a mad dog, a penny weight of it dissolved in wine is administered. It is also useful in accelerating parturition when the labour pains of women have come on. A small quantity of it being applied to carbuncles, pustules or other eruptions on the body. They are presently dispersed, and it is efficacious in many other complaints. The flesh also of the animal is sold at a dear rate, being thought to have a higher flavour than other kinds of meat, and by all persons it is esteemed a delicacy. End of quote, and this is in the Travels of Marco Polo, and you can get the links online, you can look along. So therefore you have Marco Polo recording along with his travels the history of what we would call dinosaurs, or what seem to be dinosaurs living alongside man, and how they killed them, how they needed to kill them, etc., and that they would use part of the dead carcass for medicinal purposes. We also have Pliny the Elder recorded and wrote about huge dragons. And here we have huge dragons recorded and written about by Pliny the Elder. Between 23 AD to 79 AD. Pliny the Elder was an author, naturalist and natural philosopher, as well as a naval and army commander of the early Roman Empire. So this guy's not just going to make this up, okay? He was a philosopher, naval and army commander, you know, early Roman Empire. You know, these people were not stupid. They recorded what they observed. In his book Natural History, Naturalis Historia, he records and describes what seems to be what we call today dinosaurs. Obviously today, I say it again, what we call today dinosaurs wasn't penned until the middle of the 19th century. Prior to that, they would have had different names to describe them. Large terrible lizards, serpents, dragons. The elephant, he falls down dead. So here we have what we would call today dinosaurs. Book 8, and we got the chapter there, quote, elephants bred in that part of Africa which lieth beyond the deserts. India bringeth forth the biggest. So these are the big elephants, I think this is saying here. And it's comparing elephants with these huge dragons that are being described. So we have elephants breed in that part of Africa which lieth beyond the deserts. India bringeth forth the biggest. India brings forth the biggest elephants because they breed that big in this part of India. Elephants breed in that part of Africa which lieth beyond the deserts. And we talk about India bringeth forth the biggest. So he's comparing African elephants with Indian elephants. He's saying there's elephants in Africa and there's India that bring forth the biggest ones. So the big elephants, India bringeth forth the biggest. as also the dragons that are also continually at variance with them. So what we've got here is elephants being described, using as the standard of size, and he's saying India bring forth the big elephants. Now, and also there's dragons there who are at variance with obviously the people and the elephants, and they are at variance with them and evermore fighting. So the elephants and the dragons are fighting, and he's saying that the elephants in India are big elephants, and they're fighting with these big dragon serpents, and those of such greatness that they can easily clasp and wind round about the elephants, and withal tie them fast with a knot. In this conflict they die, both the one and the other. So these dragons are huge, they're in combat with the big elephants, wraps around the elephant, takes it down, and it says here that both the elephants and the creature dies. But obviously some of the creatures must have survived, the dragons and serpents must have survived, otherwise they'd soon learn not to fight the elephants. But also the elephant would no longer be decent food for them, because they're going to die doing it. So the quote, the elephant, he falls down dead as conquered, and with his heavy weight crusheth and squeezeth the dragon that is wound and wreathed about him. The dragons were hereof entangle and snarl his feet and legs. First with their tail, the elephants on the other side undo these knots with their trunk as with a hand. The principal thing, the dragon makes it as the eye, makes for the eye. Now these dragons are so big overall that they be able to receive all the elephant's blood. Thus they are sucked dry until they fall down dead. So obviously the serpent is after the elephant's blood. And if this creature can take down these large elephants, suck the blood dry from them, then they must be fairly big, powerful creature, and they're described as dragons, etc., serpents. In Ethiopia there be as great dragons bred as in India. So they bred them. In Ethiopia they bred the dragons, you know, which is astounding really. Namely 20 cubits long, about 30 feet. So these dragons were bred in Ethiopia, and they were about 30 feet long. In Ethiopia there be as great dragons bred as in India, namely 20 cubits long, yeah, as I've said, 30 feet. Megasthenes writeth that there be serpents among the Indians to that bigness that they are able to swallow stags or bulls all whole. Attilus Regulus, general under the Romans, during the wars against the Carthaginians, assailed a serpent near the river Bagradi, which carried in length 120 foot. I'll say that again. This dragon, serpent, dinosaur was 120 foot in length. So there we have Pliny the Elder writing records of these dragons, serpents living alongside man. Now we come to another one now, what seems to be depicting a Stegosaurus, and it's depicted and carved into an 800-year-old structure in Cambodia. 800-year-old Stegosaurus. So the question is, how come there is a Stegosaurus-like creature carved on a building which is 800 years old? Well, in the jungles of Angkor, Cambodia, there are temples and palaces from the Khmer civilization, approximately 1200 AD. One of the temples, Ta Prohm, has many stone statues and reliefs. Most of the grey sandstone is covered with ornate, detailed carvings. These show familiar animals like monkeys, deer, water buffalo, parrots and lizards. But interestingly, one column displays an intricate carving of a Stegosaurus-like creature. The question must be asked, how could artists 800 years ago decorating this Buddhist temple know what a dinosaur looked like like when dino skeletons have knowingly only begun to be assembled during the past 200 years. And we are told dinosaurs died out 60 million years ago. Okay, so what we've got there is this. If you look, you can get these pictures on if you Google Stegosaurus depiction, Cambodia temple, you'll see this. You'll see these carvings in this temple, and you'll see around all these. There's lots of different creatures there, and they would have been depicting creatures that they would have known about because they would have witnessed them, they would have seen them. And on the back of one of these creatures you can see the shields, the spikes. So just because we see slight variation in this creature in its anatomy doesn't mean that it's not part of the Stegosaurus family, if you like, or kind. So that's what we witness on this temple. So, like the Chinese calendar, lunar calendar, 12 animals depicted. One is called a dragon, a serpent, large cerebral is a dinosaur. If they live with all the other 11 and that's why they're there, then surely that demonstrates that, just like this, if all the other animals they lived with are depicted on this temple, and there's carvings of them, and there's this one that clearly looks like what we would interpret today as a Stegosaurus, then surely that means they witnessed them and they lived alongside them. We also have a sauropod Apatosaurus depicted on ancient cylinder seal. This one, same again, you'll see the depiction on the screen. Sauropod Apatosaurus dinosaur depicted on ancient cylinder seal. An ancient Egyptian Mesopotamian cylinder seal dated at 3300 BC. Mutgard, Anton, The Art of Ancient Mesopotamia, 1969, plate 292, seems to be displaying sauropod or Apatosaurus-like dinosaurs. Now, if you take a look at the picture, you can take a look at the artist picture on the screen. It's a single. Now, on the right, if you're looking at the picture, you'll see it's a single Apatosaurus-like creature, which is an artist's conception from an Apatosaurus skeleton. Now, compare that to the ancient seal depiction on the left. So you'll see there's more than one on the left. The one on the right is for you to draw the comparison, and you see them got the heads entwined, whatever they do, they're mating or whatever, or in combat, whatever. But you can see the similarities between those creatures on the cylinder seal and the artist's depiction of an Apatosaurus. The similarities between these two depictions are very striking. The legs and feet on the Egyptian art seem to fit the sauropods better. Okay, if you just go onto Google, look at the sauropods pictures, there's lots of them on there. The head displays the biggest difference. The artist's depiction of the cartilage forming the shape of a frill or ears may be stylised or accurate, as there is no way to know from the skeletons we have today. The skill with which the Egyptian artist has captured the musculature of the animal is demonstrated with stunning realism. It must be asked, where did the artist, or how did the artist conjure up such an accurate image of what we today call dinosaurs? So the question must be asked, as I've asked similar questions throughout this, how could artists decorating an ancient Egyptian seal know what a dinosaur, sauropod, Apatosaurus looked like when dino skeletons have only begun to be assembled during the past 200 years, and we are told they died out over 60 million years ago. So that's the ancient Egyptian cylinder seal, sauropod Apatosaurus, dated 3300 BC. We have Adrian Mayer. Now, Adrian Mayer confesses that the evolutionary paleontologists dream up their theories for the answers to the secrets of the fossils. Okay. Her book, Fossil Legends of the First Americans, has been approved by the circle of the evolution academic elite. The world-renowned Jack Horner was also consulted for her book. Does little dream about her. Okay, so now Adrian Murr has said in this book, this hyperware dream state is called lucid dreaming or power dreaming by neuropsychologists. Paleontologists who trust their dreams about the meaning of fossils are perhaps not so unlike Native American discoverers of fossils during vision quests. Certainly paleontology, solving the mystery of stone creatures that will never be seen walking the earth, inspires dreams and theoretical narratives. Adrian Murr, Fossils, Legends of the First Americans, Princeton Press. So basically she is calling them legends, and they're trying to just explain all these sightings away. It must be noted also that Adrian Murr claims the Native Americans dreamed up their witness accounts of dinosaur encounters. The evidence does not support her claims. The evidence clearly supports real eyewitness accounts, but it is great to see she admits the evolutionary paleontologists use and have used this dreaming method to draw up their lines of descent. So, excuse me. So she is admitting, and we all know the paleontologists conjure up and dream up when they're attempting to draw up transitionary fossils, except which aren't there. They make them up, and she's accepting that. So we also have another one from an ancient urn, a Mosasaurus, depicted on ancient urn. Mosasaurus, dinosaur sea creature. Now, if we come into literalism concerning dinosaurs and etc., I mean, you wouldn't literally call a mosasaur a dinosaur because it'd be classed as a sea creature, but they are still put in there, and people, you know, would even though technically they're not classed as a dinosaur, but they would have claimed they've died out 60 to 70 million years ago. And the question needs to be answered again is, well, why is a Mosasaurus depicted on an ancient urn? Mosasaurus depicted on ancient urn. So how come there is a Mosasaurus-like creature depicted on an urn which is approximately 2,500 years old? Picture across the screen again. Take a close look at the picture attached. An ancient urn from Caria, which was located in Asia Minor, Turkey. The artefact is dated from 530 BC, that's 2,500 years ago. We see on the urn pictures of several known sea creatures, a seal, octopus and dolphin. But more interestingly, we see what appears to be a Mosasaurus. The characteristics of the sea creature, with the precisioning of the jaws, big eyes, large teeth and flippers, clearly match a Mosasaurus skeleton very well. If you take a look at the artist's drawing of a Mosasaurus, you will not fail to see the resemblance. Okay, the question must be asked, I'll say it again with all the other ones, 2,000 years ago, how could the artist decorating a 2,500-year-old urn know what a Dinosaurus, sea creature, aquatic lizard, Mosasaurus look like, when dinosaur skeletons have only begun to be assembled during the past 200 years, and we are told they died out over 60 million years ago. Hypothetical years, by the way. Never seen years. So, again, a Mosasaurus, like all the others, you know, we need to look at these, and it's not just one which could be explained away. There are many of them. We also got flying winged reptile serpents. Now this was recorded by the Greek historian Herodotus. Now these are people who are known as great historians. You know, we take note of everything else they say and apply them as legitimate historical accounts. So why is it we seem to have problems when we're taking into account when they describe what we would call dinosaurs, large terrible lizards, dragons, serpents? Why is that? It's because, as I said at the beginning, that we have a framework, an evolutionary framework we're trying to fit all this evidence into, or the evolutionists trying to fit all this evidence into, and they just dismiss it because it doesn't fit the paradigm, it doesn't fit the framework, it doesn't fit the worldview, and it can't possibly be true. Herodotus must be wrong, Pliny the Elder must be wrong, You know, the other Marco Polo must be wrong. So we need to look at these and be honest with ourselves and not think that everything our ancient ancestors recorded was just myth, and where they were less intelligent than us, because they weren't. You know, we can look throughout human history just to demonstrate that we're not as less as intelligent as us. You need to look at the pyramids. They built great structures. They were wonderfully talented architects, designers, builders, historians, and they recorded for us accounts of creatures that they were amazed at themselves. These creatures were something to behold, something which were worth recording. So flying winged reptile serpents, account recorded by Greek historian Herodotus. The Greek historian Herodotus, 48 BC to 45 BC, who's known as the father of history in Western culture, wrote and recorded after investigation accounts told him of flying winged reptiles. These flying winged serpents' wings are not described as having feathers. They're not feathers, okay? No feathers. They're not feathers, okay? Before someone says, oh, the feathers. They were not described, winged serpents' wings are not described as having feathers, but resemble the wings of the bat. They resemble the wings of the bat. He also witnessed for himself the death debris of these creatures, heaps of bones and spines piled high, a mass graveyard of winged serpents, reptiles, no feathers, wings described in the same structures, on the same textures, etc., as bats. They went out of the way to explain that. They were saying, these aren't birds, these are not birds, these are something else. Quote, the region in which the spines are scattered upon the ground is of the nature of an entrance from a narrow mountain pass to a great plain, which plain adjoins the plain of Egypt, end quote. Quote, and the story goes that at the beginning of the spring, winged serpents from Arabia fly towards Egypt, and the birds called abysses meet them at the entrance of this country, and do not suffer the serpents to go by, but kill them. On account of this deed, it is, say the Arabians, that the ibis has come to be greatly honoured by the Egyptians, and the Egyptians also agree that it is for this reason that they honour these birds. So there we have serpents. Serpents, obviously, winged creatures, were obviously causing problems, and so the Egyptians were pleased that these other birds were taking them down, and they would honour them. End quote there. Quote, as for the serpents, its form is like that of the water snake, and it has wings not feathered but mostly nearly resembling the wings of the bat. Let so much suffice as has been said now concerning sacred animals, and this is all found in the History of Herodotus, Part 2, 75 and 76. I'm sure you can Google it. In fact, I've got the link, Gen1Rev22 blogspot.com. Go onto the page, put in dinosaurs at the top left hand search bar, and you will come to the dinosaur pages, and you can click on the links, and they should be working. Hopefully they are. I think they are. I won't click on them now. So there we have Herodotus giving an in-depth account of large winged reptile serpents, and going out of his way to record them, like I say, because they would have been amazed themselves at them. So I think that will end today's this video's examples. Like I say, I've done part 1, check it out. I'll do part 3, and I think we can see from those depictions they can't be explained away like Mer and Carl Sagan and others attempt to do. Some kind of evolutionary memory which was passed on. It's just like they say themselves, you know, it's just these things need to be observable, and they're not observable, they're not scientific, they're just they've just made up so stories to do away with, or because they're in denial, because they know the timeline of evolution needs millions and billions of years. So, and dinosaurs are required in order to uphold their millions of years, and they need the million years. And not only they use dinosaurs to draw in children into the evolutionary worldview, and they wouldn't be able to use the dinosaurs in their evolutionary worldview. It demonstrates, which it has been, that dinosaurs have lived alongside man. It would just do away with it all. As Lewis Jacobs said, you know, if it could be demonstrated that dinosaurs and man lived alongside each other, then the whole evolutionary timeline and years is, they're going to have to rethink, like they've had to do lots of times, and reframe everything, but they won't admit it, as I've already said. So thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll enjoy and check out for yourselves what is in this video. I'd just like to finish on how the evolutionary worldview works. As on the website, one of the blogs is called The Storyteller. Now, evolutionary worldview needs storytelling. Charles Darwin himself was a storyteller. He loved telling stories to his family. It's recorded as he was a storyteller. He had a wonderful imagination. We can see that from his theory, you know, in his books, and what he came up with, the extrapolation of what he came up with, you know, from variation within species, etc. And we extrapolated that it would eventually lead to, you know, from a microbe to a microbiologist, from common ancestry. I'm not saying a microbe turned into a microbiologist, but I'm saying that there is the tree of life, evolutionary tree of life, where we've got common ancestry and you trace it all back. You know, this is pure imagination, and Charles Darwin loved telling stories, and so do evolutionists and the evolutionary proponents. You know, a vivid imagination is the needed speciality for a successful evolutionary theory writer. Stories that require little thought in the mind of the hearer are the tools used to dupe the masses. Just enough technical information is passed on so as to give some credibility to the story. You know, we can identify ancestors or missing links, and we cannot devise testable theories to explain how a particular episode of evolution came about. This is Guy and Peter Bowler, in his review of Deep Time by Henry Guy, says that Guy is adamant that all the popular stories about how the first amphibians conquered the dry land, how the birds developed wings and feathers for flying, how the dinosaurs went extinct, and how humans evolved from apes are just products of our imagination, driven by prejudices and preconceptions. And this is Peter Bowler, review of In Search of Deep Time by Henry Guy, Free Press, 1999, American Scientist, 88, 169, March to April 2000. So, as I've said, storytelling is needed. And so listen to the facts and come to your own conclusion. Don't listen to what other people are telling you. Check it out. So this is Gen 1 Rev 22 Ministries. Thank you and goodbye till next time.